Hello, everyone, and here's a short video on define names, one of the other concepts of chapter 5. And so the idea of define names is that typically when we refer to a cell, so if I look at cell C8 in this hypothetical quarterly budget, we would say that the cell I'm clicked on is in column C, it's in row 8, it is C8. If I were to expand that to a three-dimensional cell reference, well, this is, sheet one, cell C8. If I had a four-dimensional cell reference, well, right now this file is called book one, so it's in book one, in the sheet called sheet one, in the cell called C8. But if I have a file that has lots of tabs, think about the Tibetan restaurant example file that we used. There's a lot of different restaurants, a lot of different tabs. It's hard to remember, well, what is, Tibetan Grill C508 versus C506 versus C507, and then each one of those sheets had a lot of calculations. And so there is a tool called define names where I can give a name to something. And so in chapter 5, we're giving names primarily to cells, although in chapter 6, we're going to use the same idea for a table. And in chapter 7, we're going to use it for lookup tables like the VLOOKUP table. In chapter 5, they introduce this concept. If I'm in cell C8, I can put my cursor there and say, this is the cell that I want to name. And I go up to the formula ribbon and I go to define name. When I click on it, it's going to suggest a name based on the text around it. In this case, this is not total income exactly because it's October income. And so I'm going to go in and change the name and say October OCT underscore income. It doesn't like spaces, so I'm going to put that underscore there. And it's referencing sheet one, C8. You notice a three-dimensional cell reference. I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go over and name cell D8, click define name, go in and say, okay, this is NOV, income, referencing sheet 1, D8, and then I'm going to define the name of cell E8 and say define name, and this is DEC for December underscore income. And so when I define these names, there is a tool called Name Manager. And Name Manager, when I click on it, is going to show me a list of all the named cells that are in here. And you'll notice there are more than three because I did previously name the cells in C14, D14, and E14 as October, November, and December expenses and abbreviated them. And so, this name manager is sort of like the librarian. It catalogs what all the objects are in your spreadsheet that have these names. And so you can connect to these named ranges with a hyperlink. Again, may not happen often, but they might ask you that in a SAM training activity. But one of the other purposes is that if I'm doing a calculation, so if I wanted to calculate net income in this spreadsheet, normally I might say, well, take C8 and subtract C14. That is total income minus total expenses for October. But if I wanted to do that using defined names, I could say equals and then start typing the letter O, and you'll notice that it shows me a list of my defined names in addition to the functions that might start with the letter O. And so I can say, let's take October income minus October expense. And so I don't have to remember, well, was that in row 8 or 12 or 14? I just use the name of that in the equation. And so it says October income minus October expenses. It is going to be 1300 minus 1200 is 100. And I can do that again for November. So I can say NOV, and I'll find November income minus November expenses. I will note that, if I were to have typed in equals E8 minus or F D8 minus D14, I would get the same number because I'll, speaks multiple of these types of reference range names. But when I go to submit to SAM, if it asks for a defined name or it asks me to use a defined name in a formula, it will count it wrong if you use just a regular old cell reference. And so, again, sometimes people will say, well, I got the value that shows in the answer, but they got points taken off. Again, look at the instructions closer. It's likely that it was asking you to use those defined names in an equation or in a function. And if you didn't, then it could take off points. And so I'll finish this one here with the last one, which is December. And again, DEC was our abbreviation. So I take December income minus December expenses. And when I hit enter, I get the same value, obviously, as the numbers are the same. But if I change the income or change the expense values, obviously the monthly totals would change and the net income would change accordingly. And so, in that way, we can use defined names as part of our uh, strategy for referencing cells. And so that name, in this particular case, was referencing data that's on this sheet. But remember, when I went to name manager, the reference that it gives me here is a three-dimensional cell reference. And so if I'm referencing, location 8 net income, location 7 net income, location 6 net income, and those are on three separate sheets. If I use the English abbreviation for that or the defined name in English, then I don't have to remember, well, which sheet was that value on and what cell. I can use the already named values there. And so, in some chapters, you have to watch out for SAM files that are given to you because they will already name things. So, Name Manager shows you what was already done for you. And so, they may ask you to do something without even having to name it. And that's because Name Manager already shows a record of these names being defined. And so, keep that in mind whenever you inherit a file via SAM or any other method. So that's a short explanation of defined names. Again, if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in class.